OMA Logistics Management. Purchasing and Supply Relationships, Part 2. This is a pre-recorded edition. I am Kyla Campo, your first reporter. Supplier networks can be formal or informal groups of companies whose common interest is that they all supply a particular customer or support an entire industry. Three such networks are considered here. First, we have the Supplier Associations. Second, Japanese Keiretsu. Third, we have the Italian District. Let's talk about Supplier Associations. ETKI 1998 defines a supplier association as the network of a company's important suppliers brought together for the purpose of coordination and development. Through the Supplier Association Forum, this company provides training and resources for production and logistics process improvements. The association also provides the opportunity for its members to improve the quality and frequency of communications, a critical factor for improving operational performance. Supplier associations may be traced back to the late 1930s, with the oldest known group being one linked to Japanese automotive manufacturer Toyota. This early group consisted of 18 suppliers producing basic commodity items such as screws, nuts, and bolts. These suppliers formed the group for the benefit of themselves. The Toyota organization itself did not perform an active role in the beginning of the association. However, the distant role of Toyota was to change as raw materials became scarce during the Second World War. As part of wartime control by the Japanese government, small and medium-sized firms were directed to supply larger firms, which were being utilized as distributors of raw materials by the government. Prescribing the flow of materials forced the movement of scarce raw materials to key manufacturers. Through this direct interventionist approach, the government tried to force assemblers and the subcontractors to work together to increase the efficiency of the supply chain. The policy employed by the government therefore encouraged assemblers to establish links with suppliers to ensure component supplies. The characteristic approach of the government assisted the foundation of several associations. The institutional approach by government succeeded in determining the future structure of the supply chain for Japanese automotive companies. Japanese car assemblies changed their modus operandi to align with the prevailing governmental coercive isomorphic forces, thereby obtaining social legitimacy. However, it was not until the early 1940s that assemblers began to recognize the potential benefits of becoming active members of the associations. In 1943, Toyota became interested in the management of the association. Through the provision of management support, Toyota started to develop and improve confidence and trust between members and itself. Table 9.1 presented primary objectives for establishing and developing supplier associations. Objective: the provision of manufacturing tools and techniques such as GIT, Kanban, and Tikura. Rationale: improve knowledge and application of best practice tools and techniques within the supply base. Second, produce a uniform supply system. Its rationale is to remove MODA or waste from the system, then standardize process management in all parts of the supply chain. Third, facilitate flow of information and strategy formulation. Its rationale: the assembler assists the suppliers in formulating an improvement strategy by providing best practice information. Fourth, increase trust between buyer and supplier. Its rationale: the result of gaining improvements in the first three objectives is an improvement in trust. Fifth, keep suppliers and customers in touch with market need. Its rationale: assemblers aid their suppliers in understanding the needs of the customer through sharing market intelligence, sales plans, and development opportunities. Sixth, enhanced reputation of assembler within supply base. Its rationale, assemblers attempt to prove to their suppliers that they are worth dealing with. Seventh, aid smaller suppliers. Its rationale, some supplier associations are established to aid smaller associations who could not support the development or improvement programs necessary to achieve world-class manufacturing standards from their own internal resources. Eighth, increased length of trading relationship. Its rationale, through supporting suppliers in the development of their operations, the assembler needs to invest resources. Through committing resources, the assembler increases the asset specificity of the supplier, and it is therefore important that the relationship is maintained. Ninth, sharing development benefits. Its rationale, the association forum supports not only supplier-assembler improvements, but also supplier-supplier knowledge sharing. Lastly, providing examples to suppliers on how to develop their own supply base. Its rationale, the performance of the entire supply chain is improved by cascading supply chains management techniques into it. The Supplier Association Model. Areas for benchmarking were those that CUMRE had itself already established as competitive priorities. They were, first, quality. EPM of components received, goods produced, and goods shipped. Second, the productivity, value added per employee, throughput, and operation times. Third, delivery, the percentage of deliveries on time to customer and from suppliers. Fourth, stock turn ratio. Fifth, continuous improvement plans, team activities, and employee development programs. Japanese Keiretsu. One of the Japanese business structures that has received interest from Western business is the Keiretsu. Keiretsu is a term used to describe Japanese business consortia based on cooperation, coordination, joint ownership, and control. The supply chain Keiretsu is a network in which activities are organized by a lead firm. The typical supplier networks of large automobile and electronic firms are managed and led by the major assemblers as shown in Figure 9.6. The formation of Keiretsu has occurred as a result of the strategy in the 1960s of assemblers and sourcing sub-assemblies to increase capacity, leading de facto to the emergence of a tiered structure. Italian districts. The third way of organizing supply partnerships has been popularized and led by industrial districts in Italy, Picatinny 2002. Porter, 1990, commented on the strengths of the Italian ceramic tile cluster in the Sassuolo district in his competitive advantage of nations. Producers benefited from a highly developed set of suppliers, support industries, services and infrastructures, and a geographic concentration of firms in the district, supercharged the whole process. Districts are characterized by hundreds or even thousands of small, family-owned firms with a handful of employees working single shift. The great majority of firms are led by the entrepreneurs who are craftsmen, often relying on the most basic planning and control tools.
We will now be discussing about the supplier development. I am the Guzman Kiara Shaina reporting. The key issue: how can upstream supply processes be integrated to improve material flow? One of the keys to increased responsiveness in the supply chain is a high level of integration with upstream suppliers. Analysis of the supply chain often shows that product lead time is usually measured in weeks rather than days. This is caused by excessive inventories of raw materials, packaging materials, and intermediate products being held upstream of the final point of manufacture. Not only does this represent a cost burden, it also increases the peak time of the supply chain as a whole. Suppliers appear unable to make improvements or fail to do sufficiently quickly. Customers who feel their own performance is being hampered yet remain committed to their relationship with the supplier, often seek ways to remedy the situation. Supplier development consists of any effort of a buying firm with a supplier to increase its performance or capabilities and meet the buying firm's short-term or long-term supply needs. Unfortunately, the temptation for buyers to gain short-term advantage still exists in supplier development to the detriment of long-term partnerships. Also, meeting the needs of buying firms is not necessarily linked to the development that would enhance overall supply chain competitiveness. Therefore, care must be taken not to lose sight of end customer needs in the transactions between specific pairs of companies. Various trends are observable as leading-edge companies seek to improve their management of the upstream supply chain, including integrated processes and synchronous production. Our next topic is integrated processes. A key focus of supplier development should be the alignment of critical processes, such as new product development and material replenishment and payment. This alignment needs to consider collaborative planning and strategy development. It is perhaps the concept of joint strategy development that distinguishes integrated supply chains from mere marriages of convenience. While the customer always be preeminent in the determination of joint strategic goals, involvement of key suppliers in this process benefits all parties. Process integration can be enhanced through the creation of supplier development teams. The purpose of these teams is to work with suppliers to explore ways in which process alignment can be achieved. For example, seeking to establish a common information highway between the vendor and the customer, or working to establish common product identification codes. Nissan in the UK reports that supplier development teams have been a significant element in its success in creating a more responsive supply chain. Next topic is synchronous production. Linking upstream production schedules with downstream demand helps to improve material flow. The creation of a seamless network of processes aims to dramatically reduce inventories while greatly enhancing responsiveness. The Japanese concept of Hijunka seeks coordination of material movements between different processes in the supply network. Hijunka is a Japanese word that means leveling. When implemented correctly, Hijunka elegantly and without haste helps organizations meet demand while reducing wastes in production and interpersonal processes. According to the ebook, Hijunka is often referred to as leveled scheduling, which involves distributing volume and mix evenly over a given time period. Output of each major processes in the supply chain therefore matches end customer demand as closely as possible throughout that time period. Transparency of information upstream and downstream is essential for synchronization to work. For example, the supplier must be able to access the customer's forward production schedules, and the customer must be able to see into the supplier's stockroom. The virtual supply chain envisages partners in the chain being linked together by a common information system, so that information replaces the need for inventories. Another approach that seeks to improve synchronous supply chain processes is that of Vendor Managed Inventory or VMI. Here, the supplier takes responsibility for planning and controlling the customer's inventory. The advantage is that A large element of uncertainty in the supply chain is removed through shared information. The need for safety stock can thereby be dramatically reduced.